So I'm thinking about ruminating today. Do you ever ruminate? If you look that word up in the dictionary, you'll find that it comes from the Latin. One of the meanings is to chew the cud, which is a good metaphor for ruminating. So something happens to you or somebody says something to you or something's going to happen, and we latch onto that and it latches onto us with a kind of an attachment it's like a death grip. Sometimes you just can't let it go. You just want to think about it, think about it, think about it, turn it over, analyze it, and think about it some more. That's what ruminating is. It's chewing the cud. I ruminate a lot. I have all my life. And probably one of my problems is I've ruminated on the wrong things. You know, the law of attraction says that we get what we think about, whether we want it or not. And there's a whole array of things out there that are waiting for us. And by some mystical means, it seems that we attract those things that we think about. So I've had a little ruminating experience today I'll share with you. It was just yesterday. I was in a conversation with the CEO of our company, and he mentioned that one of our people in HR had resigned, and he was a little upset about that. And during the course of the conversation, we talked about many things. He just mentioned that she had mentioned me in their final conversation. And since she's in HR, she knows what my salary is. And she knows that I'm making more money than she does. She's only 24 years old. And a couple of times he said in the conversation, she mentioned that, and she wondered out loud, well, what does Pat do around here anyway? Well, that was about the extent of it. The conversation went on, and that thing latched onto me, kind of like, remember that scene in The Alien where he popped out of somebody's chest and he jumped right on their face and wrapped itself right around their face and wouldn't let go? Well, sometimes that's what these thoughts do with me. That thought just latched onto me, and I just chewed on it, chewed on it, chewed on it, until this morning I realized what I was doing, and I realized how I was going against really some of the things that I study and try to practice myself. So let me try to explain what's happening here. It's called the ladder of inference. Now this is going to be kind of hard to do. It's a little hard to do a PowerPoint presentation while you're riding on the motorcycle. But I'm going to get out my charts and my pointer and my professorial attire. And I will give you a little lecture here about the ladder of inference to explain what's happened to me, and I'll bet it's probably happened to you as well. So at the bottom of the ladder, what we have is data, just pure raw data. Now, the important thing to remember is at that point, that data has no meaning. It is absolutely neutral. It's neither good nor bad. It's just data, and we could convert that into ones and zeros and put it on a videotape. But what we do is we select the data that we want from that array. And once we've selected that data, then we start making assumptions about it. And once we've made those assumptions, we add meanings. And sometimes those meanings are cultural, sometimes they're personal. And we form conclusions about that. That's the way things are. And then those conclusions turn into beliefs. And those beliefs then determine our actions. Well, what happens here is what's called a reflexive loop. As we form these beliefs then influence the future data that we select. And we get caught in this loop of being stuck into our belief system. So this is what's happening to me, or what was happening to me, is in the conversation I got some data. There was much data in that conversation. It wasn't just about her. I chose to select that portion of the data that I wanted to attach to. I ruminated on that, and I made some assumptions about it. Well, one of the assumptions was she's 24, I'm 73. Uh-oh, there's a big gap there. I think she's trying to sabotage me. I start to add meanings to this whole thing. What that means is that maybe it's right that older people do have a harder time in corporations. Maybe she doesn't like me. I thought she did like me, but maybe I was wrong. I'm going through this whole process. And so I'm coming to some conclusions about this thing in the early stages. And I'm just concluding that she's out to get me. That all this time she really doesn't like me. And now on her last day, she's trying to bring me down. And so I can see a belief system forming here that younger people don't like older people. They don't understand us. They think they're better. They think they have this sense of entitlement. And you've heard that whole story before. Now, fortunately, I caught myself before I got too far up the ladder, and I was able to talk myself back down. But normally, that could have influenced my future actions. It's not a healthy thing. So that's what we do, is we create these stories. We ruminate, we create these stories about what's going on. And usually these stories have a hero and they have a villain. Sometimes the hero is us, and sometimes the villain is them. But in other cases, sometimes we're the villain, and they're the hero. Oh my goodness, I'm such a bad person. Why in the world, how could I have ever done that to that person? And we blow these stories up all out of proportion. And they have no connection to reality. So think about that. I'd like to hear your thoughts on if you have any experiences with rumination. And I'll leave you with one of my favorite quotations. It's helped me a lot. It's from Viktor Frankl, who wrote a book, Man's Search for Meaning. And he survived the Nazi concentration camp, lost his whole family, lost his life's work and everything, but still was able to maintain his sanity, go on with a brilliant career and write books. And here's what he said. He said, there's a space between stimulus and response. And in that space, we have the freedom to choose. And that's where our real freedom lies. So our whole world is full of stimuli. Everything we see is stimuli, and we have a response to all of it. And if we can just slow down and stop and be mindful of what's going on inside of us at that moment, when the emotions arise and the story begins to develop, we can calm it down and we can slow down the response. And when we can start to do that, we've taken the first step to real freedom and happiness. So let me know what you think about that. And of course, if you're inclined to, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. See you next time.